Okay, perfect. So welcome to this GoGN end of year special. I'm really excited to see you all. So many people coming from around the world to join today's session. My name is Beck Pitt. I am one of the co-directors of GoGN, and I'm presenting on behalf of Rob and Karina as well to present through some of the activities we've been doing this year. We're also lucky enough to have Saraswati and Kylie on the call as well from the team, and we'll be picking up on some of the work that we've been doing together as we work through today's presentation. So thanks so much, everyone, again for joining us. What I'm going to do today is take us through a bit of an overview of the network, where we're up to at the moment in terms of reach and numbers, and then talk a bit more about some of the activities we've been doing. So we'll start off by talking about as some of you may be aware, we didn't have a face-to-face workshop this year, so we'll talk a little bit more about some of the activities we have been doing. That includes being at OER 25, and then also some of the other collaborative activity and events that we've participated in. We then have an update about our EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion work, talk a bit more about our publications, outputs, and sprints. The scholarships, we've awarded some wonderful scholarships this year. I think we've got some people on the call as well who were awarded those. We'll touch on and just briefly touch on those, and you can find out more over on the blog. And then also, of course, we'll talk a little bit about our pilot regional hub work that we've been doing and what that's and how that's been going. We're then going to look forward and we'll have a look into 2026. As some of you will be aware, our next face-to-face workshop will be in February in 2026. So really looking forward to seeing some of you face-to-face, but also being able to, as we'll explain later, bring some of you in. We'll be live streaming those sessions. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So as I mentioned earlier, my name is Beck Pitt. I can see Rob's joined the call as well here. And we have Saraswati and Kylie as well on the call, but this is the GoGN team. Saraswati joined us this year, working on the evaluation of the regional hubs, and thanks so much to her and all the members of the team for all their work this year. It's been really great, and we're really looking forward to going into 2026 and the work that we've got planned together. Just want to remind and touch back to GoGN and the kind of aims of the network, just in case folks aren't so familiar on the call with what we do as a network. So we're very much focused on raising the profile of research into open education and supporting doctoral researchers working on open education topics. So this is the focus of GoGN and the work that we do. We have obviously EDI, as I mentioned, we'll be touching on some of our work around equity, diversity, and inclusion shortly. But we have a strand of that running through and that's core to the activities that we do and the promotion of that in the field of open education research. And then finally, open practices and developing openness as a process of research. And that's also really critical to what we do as a network. And we'll touch on some of those things as we go through this presentation. Just to give you an update on where we're up to in terms of the network and what we're looking like. For folks that are new to GoGN or maybe haven't had the opportunity to find out more about the history of the network, you can read more in our strategic review. So in 2023, we produced a strategic review. We'll come back and touch on that shortly. But this really also outlines the history of the network and tells you a little bit more of the story of GoGN. And we were started in 2013, founded by the late Professor Fred Mulder, who you can see here on the right-hand side with Glenda. And there's some photos of some of the workshops that we've held over recent years as well. And GoGN came to be managed by the Open University, which is where we're based in 2015, so 10 years ago now. And as you'll see in a moment, and as you can see on this slide, throughout that time, the number of doctoral researcher members and alumni has grown. The network has grown substantially over that period. So we currently have 208 doctoral members and alumni as of a few days ago, and these are based in institutions in 30 different countries around the world. We also have this wider community of practice that encompasses doctoral researchers and master's students with an interest maybe in open, but not directly researching on that area, supervisors, practitioners, and other interested folks. And these form this wider kind of community of practice, which is around kind of probably around 300 people now. So this what we have a really big network in terms of who is involved and has an interest in GoGN. Around 35% of our doctoral members and alumni group are also alumni now. So obviously over time, people go on and successfully complete their doctorates, which is fantastic, and kind of become alumni within that group. 30% of our members are based in the Global South. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we do have this huge increase in numbers of members and alumni since June 2016, June 2015. And you can see that here on this diagram. We should probably update this because it's goes to 2023, but you can see really clearly how the network numbers kind of grow across that period as, of course, GoGN we continue to kind of promote the network and the interest in open education research and grows over that period. Before I move on, I just want to talk a little bit about the role of amplifying open education research and pick up on that, and just to give an update on some of the work or the work of everyone in the network in this respect. So we do have a Google Scholar profile. You can see that here. This was a screenshot taken a few days ago, and this is although citations aren't obviously there's different ways of measuring impact, but in terms of citations and in terms of GoGN member and alumni citations, this is now around almost the 65,000 kind of mark. So a really big impact that our members and alumni are making in terms of the research that they're publishing and that's being cited. I'm now going to move on and talk a little bit about the activities that we've been doing throughout the year. And I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about OER 25, which I know some people on the call today were at. And this took place in London in June, the 23rd and the 24th of June, earlier this year. So there's some lovely pictures of people here as well. So I'll just share those. As I mentioned, we didn't have a face-to-face workshop for various reasons this year, but we did support 10 GoGN members and alumni paying their conference registrations and had 4 OER 25 scholarships, which we awarded to Alison, Judith, Brandon, and Gulliver. And you can see some pictures of folks here. We held a GoGN dinner to kind of connect and bring people together, which you can see on the right-hand side. And there's some wonderful blog posts that you can find on the QR code there on the left-hand side. And there were 10 GoGN members presenting at OER 25 and 14 sessions from folks plus the team. So really fantastic. Fantastic. And welcome everybody as well that's just joined us a moment ago. Oops. Perfect. So before I move on, I just wanted to talk a bit more about some of the other events and collaborations that we've developed or been involved in throughout the year. So this is a bit of a mashup kind of slide, so apologies. But we also participated, we were very lucky, Rob and myself, to participate in OTESA in Toronto in early June, and to see some of our wonderful colleagues and GoGN members and alumni there. This was a co-located event, so it was happening in other places and online as well, but we were lucky enough to be in Toronto. There were 14 presentations from 8 GoGN members, including 2 of our scholarship awardees who also participated. So Jess and Helen were also presenting and sharing more on their work at that conference. You can see on the top left-hand image, that's Rob presenting at the conference. In the bottom left-hand corner, we were also online at OpenEd in October, which was really fantastic. And I know lots of people, including Manisha, one of our scholarship recipients, participated in that conference in Denver. We participated online and were presenting around the regional hub work, which I'll come on and talk to you a little bit more about in a moment. And we had 12 sessions featuring GoGN members and alumni plus the team, and we also were very lucky to be able to participate in the closing panel with colleagues and friends from the Open Education Research Group. So really fantastic opportunity there, and with thanks to everybody who participated in that. Also on the right-hand side, I just wanted to highlight, we had a number of online events this year. We were lucky enough to have Penny Jane Burke and John Rainford join us earlier this year. We had two wonderful member research specials, but we also, as many of you know, in the autumn had a collaboration with the Knowledge Equity Network and held 6 sessions across, I think it's through September, October, November time. Featuring a range of wonderful speakers, and you can find recordings of these on the QR code on the right-hand side. But really wonderful collaboration with the Knowledge Equity Network. And we also joined the network of Open Orgs this year as well. So really looking forward to collaborating with folks involved in that moving forward into 2026. So thanks so much to everyone who was part of those or participated in those conferences and events. We really do appreciate that. Moving on behalf, I wanted to pick up on some of the equity, diversity, and inclusion work that we've done through the year, and just highlight a few things here. First of all, we did develop, as many of you were involved in, we developed a code of conduct. This started out during the Brisbane workshop back in the end, the end of 2024. We began to develop a code of conduct, which really supports and contributes to people feeling respected and supported at our kind of both face-to-face and online events and activities. This is really key because it also feeds into the work that we did this year in terms of the regional hubs and in terms of the kind of things that we've implemented going forward. So the Discord group, for example, which is kind of soft launched and that we'll be building on going into 2026. So as it says here, it was collaboratively developed. We released this in April 2025, and we have a commitment to review this annually. And this will be something that we'll be revisiting in the new year and that we'll be revisiting both in face-to-face, but also with the wider membership who aren't able to be in the room in the Netherlands in February. And as I mentioned, this provides a really solid foundation for current and future activities. So you can find this here on the right-hand side. So please do, if you haven't already familiarised yourself with that, please do go and check it out. And obviously feedback is welcome. This is really important. It's an open conversation to how we develop that going forward. We also, and with thanks to Paco, who translated the EDI guidelines. So for people that may not be aware, we have some guidelines on equity, diversity, and inclusion, which came out of some work from 2018 and 2020 with a focus on Africa and Latin America. And these EDI guidelines have been translated into Spanish. You can find those on the QR code here, and with a big thanks to Paco for doing that work for us. Finally, just to highlight the work that was done by everyone in the wider GoGN community in the Brisbane workshop at the end of last year, and the EDI work that was developed from that. We will be taking that forward into 2026 and validating that before sharing. So just to give you a quick update on that, but we'll be doing taking that forward in early 2026. For people that haven't seen this picture before as well, this is one of our wonderful panels that we had as part of the event prior to OE Global in November last year. Brilliant. So I'm going to move over and hand over to Rob now for publications, outputs and sprints. But first of all, just to draw everyone's attention to some of the open research resources that we have here. For people that are new to the network, I think we may have a few folks that are new on the call, so an extra special welcome. We've collaboratively produced a lot of outputs together through the years as part of the activities we've done as a network. All of these are available on an open license, and you can see some of them here. So we have our Research Methods Handbook, we have recently our Doctoral Supervision Guide, we have a Conceptual Frameworks Guide, as I mentioned, the Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Guidelines, and then there's also some research reviews from a couple as well. And they're all available there on the QR code on the website, available for you to use. And there are opportunities to be involved in these kind of activities. And one of these is the GoGN Guide to the Viva. Rob, did you want to come in and say a few words at this point. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So we try to produce the one of the guides roughly once a year, but it doesn't always work out quite that way. We're going to try and get this one done before the end of the current funding cycle, which is May. And we already have an authoring team in place. A call went out a few weeks ago, and we were just asking for people if they want to be involved in this, and there's still a chance to be involved in it if you want. The only requirement that we make is that you have yourself been through a Viva. So we're not looking for current doctoral students for this one because you can't speak about the experience of it. Um, but we've got a few people in place already, and if you want to join the team, you can write to me. Um, I think this will probably be a slightly shorter guide because in a way it's a bit more focused. But there's already a bit of debate going on around whether this is the right name because it's not called a Viva everywhere. And sometimes you could also say it's really the process of examination that's the thing here rather than just the oral examination. But we could specialize just on that bit. We're not sure yet. But what we really want to do is kind of look at all the existing guidance that's out there and condense that and make that accessible and point to it. But then also explore a little bit like some of the elements which you might think of around openness and inclusion. So, for instance, if you have particular accessibility needs, how does that work? If you have to have a hybrid Viva or an online Viva, how does that work? What kind of things might you need to know about that? So we're sort of trying to explore as well, where is the kind of open angle on this, rather than just we've done Vivas and this is our advice. That there will be a bit of that in there. And we're also thinking about, what kind of things we might do in a future phase of GoGN. And there we might have things like guide to doing a literature review. And we know some people who we could bring in who've got a lot of experience with publishing systematic reviews, for instance. We could also have guides around the process of publishing, the process of fundraising. So there's a few different guides still to write, and we'll work on those as we can. But in our schedule leading up to the end of this phase, we're going to get this guide to the Viva stroke doctoral examination out. Hopefully, we'll validate it in February at the workshop and then release it in March, but we'll see how it goes. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Rob. That's great. And yeah, as Rob says, if you want to get involved, then please do reach out. We would love to hear more. Thanks. Perfect. So I'm now going to move on and talk a little bit about our scholarships. We're very lucky to have a couple of, at least one, I think, scholarship awardee with us as well in the audience, which is really fantastic. Our scholarships we had 3 rounds. Unfortunately, we've now finished the scholarships, but just to give you an idea of what these were about, these were open to both current doctoral researcher members of GoGN and our alumni. So we had a competitive process. We had kind of 3 rounds that people could apply for funding for up to $1,500. And these could kind of be for a wide range of kind of activities, as we'll see, from presenting research at conferences to fostering connections with other networks to for an alumni targeted kind of research as well. So they could last up to 6 months duration. And in March, we were delighted to award scholarships to Jess and to Paco for their work on inclusive and culturally responsible OEP, Paco on open science for inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And Jess presented at OTESA as part of the work that she was doing. You can read blog posts from Jess and Paco, and I'll share a QR code in a minute. Which explains more about their work and the scholarship. But yeah, thanks to Jess and Paco for all their work this year. We also, in July, awarded 3 scholarships to Davis, Angelica, and Manisha for their work on OER in Latin America, developing OER for adverse childhood experiences, ADE, and sessional instructor OEP, Open Educational Practice. And Manisha was at OpenEd in Denver as part of that scholarship. And there will be a blog post which will be coming out shortly on her experiences of that, and also work from Davis and Angelica. So thanks so much again to Davis, Angelica, and Manisha for all their work. And please do go and read more on the blog about those scholarships. I seem to be missing a QR code. There was one at some point, but I'll share a link in the chat there. apologies for that. Okay, moving on, I now want to talk a little bit about our pilot regional hubs and the work that's been happening. As many of you will be aware or even involved in, I know we have some people on the call who are part of the hubs. We had a call for pilot regional hubs in earlier this year, and we awarded uh, funding to Kenya, Asia Pacific, Ibero-America, and Canada for pilot regional hubs. So these were very generously supported by the Hewlett Foundation. We received additional funding for this work. So a big thanks to Hewlett for supporting us further with this. And this was really a direct response to member requests for greater federation. I mentioned earlier in the presentation, back in 2023, we celebrated the network's 10th anniversary. And as part of that, we held our largest workshop at that point in Edmonton, in Canada, bringing together members from the early days of the network to new members together to kind of talk about look back at what GoGN had achieved and then look forward and to better understand how we can serve our membership and what those kind of priorities would be. So one of the things, one of the key things that was suggested was this greater federation of the network so that we can better serve our diverse membership in different spaces and places. And this is really a bottom-up initiative. We wanted to hear from our membership about what they wanted to do and what to support the network in different places. So really about building capacity and, as I mentioned, that support for our diverse and growing membership, because of course, as you saw earlier in the presentation, we do have a growing membership, which is fantastic, of GoGN members. This also contributes to our ongoing commitment to EDI in open education. As I mentioned, we opened for proposals in spring, we announced our hubs in October, and we've had pilots running, and they're currently running through until early next year. And you can find the strategic review on the QR code on the right-hand side. I'm now going to walk through very briefly. I'm sure people from the hubs could talk more to this, so I'm sure people might chip in the Q&A. And this was presented as well. This is a bit of an update on the presentation from OpenEd a few months ago. But I'm just going to walk through and give you an idea of some of the activities that people have been doing and direct you as well to some of the fantastic blog posts that have been written by the hubs about the work that they're doing. So we're supporting our hubs in different ways. As I mentioned, Saraswati is leading on our evaluation, and we have these regular evaluation points with people. We've also had recently this week and last week midpoint check-ins, opportunities to talk with people. We're supporting communication between the wider membership and amplifying regional hub activities and opportunities, and that conversation between the hubs themselves and between our wider members. We had the webinar in October. We will have further activities early next year, including the face-to-face workshop in the Netherlands. We will be streaming selected sessions from that, and that will include the hub presentations as part of that, so that we can involve and hear from people who aren't able to be in the room with us at that point. Just to give you an idea of as many of you will be aware, we had a call for participation. Normally, we would hold our workshops prior to a conference, for example, OE Global, OER, etc. Obviously, in February, we don't have any conference happening. So we were delighted to receive such an overwhelming and positive response to this opportunity. So I think we've just under 50 applications from GoGN members to participate in this webinar. So some very difficult decisions about participation, but we're bringing together doctoral researchers along with representatives from our hubs and some special guests as well. We'll bring everybody together face to face in the Netherlands, but then also we will have these live streaming elements and opportunities to get involved in the activities and to have that conversation with the wider network. So this is the knowledge sharing event here at the bottom bullet point as well. And of course, as you can see here, we've also worked, each hub worked with Brian Mathers to develop some wonderful illustrations to capture the hubs and what they're doing throughout this kind of time. So you can find here, we had our launch webinar. You can find the blog post on the left-hand side and then the recording on the right-hand side here. If you haven't had the opportunity to watch those, you'll hear from the people leading the hubs themselves about the work that they're doing rather than me as I walk through in a moment. So just to say, I'll just walk through each hub in turn. As I mentioned, we have four hubs, the Ibero-American hub, which is covering Latin America, Spain, and Portugal. And some of the work that they're doing includes events in Colombia, Spain, and Mexico. They've also had online events. There is a recording available in Portuguese, Spanish, and English with subtitles that you can find on the blog with an accompanying blog post. And this is really about increasing the network visibility and reach, that cultural and linguistic diversity in Gojian and building on the EDI work. And this hub is being led by Virginia Rhodes and Paco Iniesta from UNED. We also have our Canada hub, which is being led by Connie Aga and Darian. And this hub is really focused on challenging dominant epistemologies, decolonization, and building on the EDI work that we're doing to date. Mentioned the kind of workshop that we had prior to OE Global, but it's building off of the kind of conversations that were taking place in 2023 at that point. And there was a 2-day land-based Indigenous learning event. There are a couple of blog posts available about that event now, which you can go and read over on the blog. This was at Jasper National Park. Currently, colleagues are developing an openly licensed multimedia collection, and there's also an active Discord community and book study group. We have our Kenya hub as well, which is building capacity in Kenya and East Africa context. They had their launch webinar in October 25. There is also a mentorship of folks involved in that, a doctoral researcher workshop in October, and a series of virtual webinars that is taking place. And this is being led by Stanislav Laus Gava and builds on the strategic review focus on increasing network reach and the EDI work that's being done. We also have our Asia Pacific hub, which again is focused on increasing our network reach and that linguistic and cultural diversity, and also, of course, the EDI work that we've been doing. And this has really been focused on collaboration and connection between open education researchers and deepening our understanding, as all of the hubs are doing, of the open education landscape in these different regions and spaces. So there's been a wonderful workshop in Vietnam recently, which we're going to be sharing more on the blog very soon. And there will also be a forthcoming roundtable in Indonesia, which I think is happening very soon. And this is being led by V. Chong from the University of Melbourne. So you can find out more and read some of these blog posts that are available on the QR code here on the left. But yeah, thanks to all of our regional hubs, all of their members and representatives and leads. It's been some really fantastic work. We're really excited for all that's been happening. So I'd like to thank everyone for all of their work to date. Just before we move on, some next steps in terms of the regional hubs themselves. There is that opportunity to connect in. If you're based in these regions, please do reach out to the leads. As I mentioned, there's going to be blogs and future webinars coming up. We have the event in the Netherlands, which we will be streaming. So there'll be the opportunity to hear more then. We will also have our evaluation reporting, and this will feed in, as Rob mentioned, to around our kind of next steps and our future planning as we move forward into 2026. And with that, we are now moving forward into this overview of 2026 and looking forward. And I think we've kind of covered some of these things already anyway, but just to kind of highlight a few things for folks as we move in, there's a few useful conference dates here as well. We've got OE Global and the Open Education Conference happening in October. I put OER 25 there. OER 26, I should say, and OTESA with dates and venues to be confirmed. But of course, from the January to March period, we'll be starting off in January with a drop-in session. So this is open to anyone to come along and talk to the team. And will be available online on the 22nd of January. We also, as I mentioned, have our extended 3-day workshop. We will be sharing more details on that and how to get involved in the new year. And then, of course, we have Open Education Week as well, which is being led by our OEO global colleagues and friends, and that will be happening in early March time. So just a few dates for the diary there, and we will share more obviously in our next newsletter. So I'm just going to pause and I'm going to stop sharing as well. Thanks so much for your attention and for letting me walk you through uh, some of what we've achieved together this year. And a big thank you to you all for being part of the network and for your commitment to GoGN. It really is appreciated by us all. So yeah, thank you so much. And thanks so much for listening.